Hey everyone, this is Zoe Alexander from Simply Lovely Energy. If you watched last week's video, you'd know that I started this new series where basically I just kind of talk about the behind the scenes of being a law of attraction life coach and kind of show what's going on in my life as well as sort of show the processes of things that I'm currently working through and how I do that as a energy coach. So this week I've finally manifested something for me that I've wanted for years that I think is super exciting. And tomorrow I am going on a trip to Paris, which is an especially interesting thing for me because when I was about 16, I was an American girl and I kind of had this dream of being this sophisticated Parisian woman, right? Like moving to Europe and having this apartment with my boyfriend that I loved and our cat, living in Paris and reading sophisticated books and kind of this like French girl vibe. If you look it up on Pinterest, you'll know what I'm talking about. Um, and it's interesting to me and how this dream that I had that I was 16 that I didn't really think about so much nowadays, I think has manifested for me in a lot of ways unexpectedly. Like I'm not living in Paris, but I have moved to a country in Europe where I have to speak French. And that's actually been a pretty hard manifestation for me. I have a lot of resistance in learning French, which is something I'm still trying to work through. Um, but I was reflecting on it and thinking about how excited the 16-year-old version of me would be if she looked at where I am now. I'm living in this French-speaking country in this beautiful apartment. Like I don't know, have this amazing chandelier in this apartment that I love so much. I'm living with my partner, whom I absolutely adore. And there's a lot of things going on that I think are really kind of what I dreamed about a while ago. And they weren't even things that I was consciously trying to do. I feel like set that intention almost 10 years ago. And now it's finally manifesting. So I guess sometimes things take time. So I'm excited about going to Paris and seeing what that is like. And I'm also very curious on whether it is similar to where I currently live, which I live in a city called Liege in Belgium. And it's not like a fancy kind of touristy city. It's not like Brussels or Antwerp, which are both lovely cities. This one has a very industrial feel, and it's not like a pretty city, but I get the impression that it's a very realistic view of what living in Europe is like, and that's been kind of interesting too. I've sort of had this notion as an American that Europeans were much more sophisticated than I was, and everything they did was just better. And then I've gotten here, and I've realized that it's not better; it's just different. And I think that's kind of true of almost anywhere that you live. One of the themes I've been working through in my life in general that I've become very aware of is that like a lot of home is what you make of it. Like you have to decide to be comfortable in the place that you're living, and then you'll see that comfort manifest for you. And I've always been one to kind of move and try to run away from the city that I don't like, to try to move to a better city. And so I've manifested a situation in which I was kind of forced to go to a city that I wasn't initially thrilled about, but I'm slowly starting to kind of make it my home. And now that I'm here, I'm realizing like I'm living in the type of place that I wanted to be in when I was 16. So that's kind of the main manifestation I think I've been working through. Another one that I've been seeing a lot of in different coaching groups that I'm in and just online in general is I see a lot of people talking about the balance of divine masculine and divine feminine energies, and how to bring those into sort of a healthy state. And in particular, I've been very interested in seeing how to create a divine masculine energy for myself And the way that I define this, because it can be a little different depending upon who you talk to, but sort of divine masculine is sort of the energy of action, like of taking action, shooting the arrow on a bow, so to speak. While divine feminine is more of lining up the energy. It's more of the intuition and sort of getting the shot ready. And the divine masculine is letting go and having the arrow hit its target. And the way that I've seen sort of an imbalanced divine masculine is I feel like a lot of work culture, like corporate work culture, is one that's based on just action. You know, there's not a lot of alignment and it feels very uncomfortable. And something I've noticed is I've been trying to get a job in the corporate space and I haven't. Like, I just haven't been able to do it. And I think it's in part because I'm not lined up to the divine masculine in a way that I need to in order to really get a job there. And I don't really want to get a job in a corporate space anyways. And so I've been trying to kind of process through, well, okay, what would a corporate space that I think is balanced really look like for me? And that's another thing I want to point out here, is that with law of attraction, right? Like, it's sort of, reality is your perspective. So what sort of life do you want to create for yourself? And my answer might be different than somebody else's answer. And so when I think about what space I want, I'm not necessarily saying that's the space that I think you need to have or that somebody else needs to have. It's just, what do I want that space to be like for me? And so I'd really like to have, I think, more of a balance in divine masculine, in a sense of that I take action, but it's inspired. Because I feel like I've been taking too much action and leading into an unhealthy divine masculinity, which is just doing, but not really getting the results that I want. So that's something that I've been working through. But that's a pretty abstract thing. I tend to think in very, very abstract terms. So when I talk about things I'm working through, it may sound pretty weird because it's abstract. Sorry. But that's one of the things I've been thinking about. And specifically, this really manifested for me this week when I was inspired to click on a video about productivity. And it was a female productivity blogger or vlogger, and she basically said that she's a little frustrated that one of the things that male productivity bloggers don't tend to talk about, because they are biologically different, right, is that they don't talk about how women's productivity depends a lot on their menstrual cycle. That when right before they get their period and during they get their period, they tend to be lower in energy and less motivated, and can't really do things to the same extent that they can usually when they're when they're leaving their, when they stop having their period, or sort of the high, right? She described it as kind of seasons. So like the fall is when you're kind of getting into about to get your period. And then winter is having your period. And then you emerge from that out of spring and summer. And what was interesting about that is when I watched this video, my first thought on that was like, then what is the advantage of being a woman? Like, why did God make me a woman if I can't be productive? And that was just interesting to me, that I felt like that was my first honest initial response, because there's a lot of limiting beliefs tied up in that. And in particular, the one that I must be productive to be valuable. Like that's the way that I define my self-worth. And that's something I've been trying to work through. And I know a lot of other people are trying to work through, which is kind of why I wanted to be honest about it here. And I've also seen this manifest a lot in sort of the difference in culture. Moving from the US in particular, it's a very workaholic centered area, and then moving to Europe, where Europeans don't tend to be a little more relaxed. They have more of a work-life balance. And this is really, I really saw this about a week ago when I was hanging out with some of my friends. And one of my friends, he's from Greece, right? And we were all hanging out kind of nearby this park that has the geese. And I wanted to go see the geese. And I was like, come on, let's all go see the geese. And he just kind of looked at me and he's like, what's the rush? Like, why are you hurrying? I'm relaxing right now. And it was just a really interesting cultural difference for me in that moment, because I realized that I felt like we had to go do something. Like, I couldn't just sit here. I'm wasting my time. I'm wasting my potential by just sitting here on this bench. I should be go and hanging out with the geese. And actually what I really should be doing is going home and working on perfecting my social media for my business so that I can get that going, as well as learning advanced lessons in Photoshop so that I can also get hired as a website. And it just like, it brought up all these feelings for me of like, man, I'm not doing enough. And I realized like, that's my energy, like where no matter what I'm doing, it's never enough. And that's something that I think is a big lesson for me to have to get over, and why I've kind of manifested this situation in which I feel like I'm trying to constantly do enough, but because I have this limiting belief that I can never do enough, nothing's really manifesting for me in the way that I want it to. So if you have perfectionistic tendencies or workaholic tendencies, try to sit with the concept that you're doing enough and what you're doing right now is enough, and see what comes up for you. And that's been something I've been trying to get myself to do, but I've also been noticed that I've been really avoiding trying to sit with those thoughts. So that's something to think about, and something, especially when you start your own business, that comes up a lot. Like, it feels like there's kind of this pressure culturally that you must be working 16 hours a day. But I feel like if you're working 16 hours a day, then you're not being very efficient. And maybe that's something I've learned a little more from the Europeans here. I think I feel pretty good about ending right here. I guess I just really wanted to talk about productivity and perfectionism, because those are the main things I'm working through, and I think a lot of people are working through right now as they learn how to take more aligned, inspired action instead of fear-based action. So with that, I hope you all enjoyed the video. Please let me know if you did. If not, I guess let me know. Or if there's something you want me to talk about specifically, I would love to know that too. Like, this is just kind of something I'm throwing out there because I think it's fun, and I'd love to see where these videos could potentially go. So if there's something you're interested in, just comment it below or email me. If you want to check out some of my blog posts or my coaching services and things that I do, you can find me at simplylovelyenergy.com, and I'll also link that in the description box below. And with that, thank you all for watching. I hope you have a lovely day, and happy manifesting.